So this is actually the most common of the daytime hunting birds of prey in all of North America. It's the red-tailed hawk. How do we identify a red-tailed hawk?
It's got a red tail.
By the red tail, of course, right? They wouldn't have it in the name if that wasn't the way we were supposed to look at it to try to identify it. Well, that's not a great all-capturing identifying feature. While red-tailed hawks do have a red tail, not all of them do, only the adults. As a predator, our eyesight is critical, knowing where that prey is located and knowing how far away it is. And it is made possible by having two eyes focused on the same target. Sometimes we call it binocular eyesight. It's important for a predator like this one. And what you may notice as it's up close is that this bird only has one of those two eyes. So the collision with the car resulted in trauma to that eye, and that eye was damaged beyond the point of repair, had to actually be removed. And that is why this bird cannot go back out into the wild. So while our goal in our medical facility is to treat the injuries and put the birds back out into the wild, there are some cases where we can't do that. This is the black vulture. It's our largest vulture here in South Carolina. The red-tailed hawk had those sharp grasping claws for killing the squirrel or the rat. This guy has long flat feet, good for walking on the ground. The red-tailed hawk and the vulture share those big broad wings. This is a bird that needs to stay in the air efficiently. This bird weighs twice as much as that red-tailed hawk that we saw. This is a bird that we would refer to as an obligate scavenger, which means that unlike the red-tailed hawk, who has the option, catch something alive and kill it, or find something dead and eat it, this bird essentially only eats things that are already dead. They might smell the food, or they might just stumble upon a carcass, right? And then, how do all the rest of the vultures find it? They look down here for this dark-colored thing moving around on the ground, right? No camouflage in vultures because they don't need it, and because it would be a disadvantage to them. They're social scavengers. They just look for each other. And so their presence often draws a crowd. It's something that we see a lot. They often nest in loose colonies, so a lot less territorial. But vultures are pretty flexible in terms of habitat. As long as there's dead stuff to eat, no big deal, right? If we were to look at all of the vulture species on our planet, there are 23 species of vultures, and more than half of them are endangered or critically endangered. In India and Pakistan and Nepal, over the last 30 years, their vulture populations have collapsed to near zero. Now, one of the activities that we undertake here at the center is a conservation tool that's used all over the world in a number of ways. It's a tool called captive propagation. So you're probably familiar with the California condor or the peregrine falcon. These are species that this individual is a product of captive breeding. She was actually bred here at the center going on 10 years ago. She's almost 10 years old now. But she was bred for a different reason. She wasn't bred so that we could put her out there into the wild. She was actually bred so that we could utilize her to teach more about eagle owls and about these problems. This is a bird that's never been out in nature. She's one that is part of our demonstration team. She was actually raised by hand. We know that with owls, they have to be raised in a different way in order to get them to be comfortable enough to be close to us. They're most active at dawn and dusk, but certainly much more comfortable when it's dark. Does that affect the bird's ability to come out here and do this program? And certainly it does. Does it affect her ability to see and hear and do all those things? No, not really. But does it affect her level of comfort? I think so. I think that she's probably less settled because of all the things she sees that she wouldn't normally see. As you can see, she said, maybe I'm not so comfortable being close to all of them. It's been 6 months since we've done many demonstrations, so you gotta cut her a little slack. You can see how great her camouflage is. Right? She's sitting up in that tree, and if you didn't watch her fly up there, it's going to take you a second to find her. She is built to hide.
So how is a bird recommended to your medical facility?
So how do they get here? All of them start somewhere out there in the community with someone like you, and someone who knows to get the call to us. Right? Our dispatch line, when they receive a call, they then move into getting somebody there to the bird. We have a group of volunteer staff who, that group is always growing because in many cases, who finds the bird gets roped into helping. So somebody out there notices the problem and takes the time to care enough to do something. One of our staff had an instance just this past week where she saw a bird not doing what it was supposed to do, and it turned out there was a problem. This is a bird actually that comes from a group of birds that a lot of people don't even know exists. Kites are found all over the world. We have a few of them here in South Carolina. This is a kite native to Africa. It's called a yellow-billed kite, just like the owl. He was bred in captivity for education. We have several kites here in South Carolina. Most of the kites are insectivorous. That means they eat things like dragonflies and grasshoppers, June bugs. He's a raptor, just like the owl, just like the hawk. That means he catches those insects in his feet. During the breeding season, these birds will grab prey right out of the treetops, things like snakes and lizards, without grabbing the branches of the tree, which they'll feed on those in the air, so picking off the less desirable parts and spitting those out, and only eating the things that he needs to be able to survive. So, the swallow-tailed kite, that is a species that is considered endangered here in the state of South Carolina. When you see a swallow-tailed kite, what we ask is that you report that sighting to us. We manage a database of sightings. In most years, we compile about 3,000 sightings, and we can use that to help broaden our understanding of the habitat that these birds are requiring. They are a migratory bird. They spend half of their year here in South Carolina with us. They come here to breed. They're here generally April through August, and then they head south. All of the swallow-tailed kites that nest in South Carolina winter in Brazil. So they fly, in some cases, 5,000 miles to the south.
A long way.
And even more amazing than taking a journey like that is that they take their first migration when they're only 2 months old. So we've had a couple of instances where a kite was in treatment in the hospital. It wasn't ready to go by mid-August when all the kites are out of South Carolina. But they're still in Florida for another month or two. And so we put a kite in an airplane and flown it to Florida so it could get released with other kites in Florida and hopefully make that jump. Right? And in 1991, we had 8 patients through our medical facility. Last year, we had over 1,000 patients. In a few cases, we've had to do a little more extreme work. So Mississippi kites, one of our 2 native kites, we get a lot of them, and depending on the severity of their injuries, we do our best to get them out of here because they migrate. We know that if they stay here through the winter, we can't put them out next year. Their likelihood of survival is very low. In many cases, we try to release birds near where they were found, right? And so in a lot of cases, that's just how do we get them to another part of the low country or back up to Sumter or Florence or wherever they come from. One story that I'll tell with that, we had a Cooper's hawk that was trapped in a storage container on the Cooper River, which down in the neck area of Charleston. Trapped in there, he was hunting small birds in there. Brought to us, had very minor problems, nothing major. We released him about 30 miles north of where he was found.